The Tek 6. Is it junk? Or could it possibly be war-worthy? I'll show you how. MongooseJake here with a video to showcase something that was kind of a challenge put forth by Jimmy Rohn on Facebook in one of the Nerf groups. And while he didn't specifically direct it at me, him and I were chatting and he had said, basically, I'm not going to quote him word for word, but this is close enough. He had said he never has seen a Buzz Bee Tek 6 being made as war-worthy. That came in response to me having kind of teased him about how so many of these things get slaughtered for just simply their springs. Because, well, I'll admit it, the spring inside of it's actually pretty good. It's a spring that can be used and has been used for years. I mean, I could even say over a decade now, because these are from 2005, at least the two here that I'm going to be using in this video. They're both 2005 models. And the spring in it is basically a rough equivalent, I think, to a 5 or 6 kilogram retaliator type spring. So these poor things, they get slaughtered by the hundreds. Literally. Like, people thrift them for dirt cheap, and they never see the light of day in actually being used. What happens every time is screws come out, shell gets ripped apart, and then that heart and soul of a springer, which the spring is the heart and soul of a spring-powered blaster. I mean, you can't say spring-powered blaster without spring being the first word. Unfortunately, that spring is what everybody's after when they thrift these things. Maybe sometimes the cylinders, but it's normally the spring. And everybody has said, for years, going way back to when they first came out, the only use for them is for parts. To save the screws, save the springs, and that's it. Well, I've seen where it literally is said these cannot be made to be useful in any way, shape, or form. And while Jimmy Rohn wasn't saying that himself, he just said he'd never seen one made that way. That transitions into a question. What's war-worthy? I talked with the Homely, and I posted this on my Patreon first, and they got to know that I'm up to the project. I had mentioned some of my ideas, which, if you didn't know I had a Patreon, I do. It links in the description of most every video I do. And Homely, Brett, and David Bolak are all three patrons of mine, have been for a little while, and they actually didn't help make this video possible because there's almost a foot of brass inside this thing. And yeah, every one of those is brass. 1730 seconds, 6 barrels. So stick of brass is about $5, so their patronage helped go into making this possible. So thank you to you three. But getting back to the topic, what's war-worthy? I put forth a basis as the current modern day acceptable stock blaster standard. You wouldn't want to be below that. Stock blasters fire like a hammer shot. Fires in the 60s. A retaliator fires in the around the 70 mark. So I put that as a minimum baseline. It needed to at least fire in the mid-60s to roughly 70-ish. And if I could get more than that, I'd be thrilled. But that was my baseline. Mid-60s to 70 as a hard minimum. I didn't want anything below that. Well, the stock Tek 6 fires at about 30 to 35. So that's a doubling its stock performance. To say 65 or 70 is my goal. Well, that's been achieved. I will put you over to Chronograph here in a second and let you see some shots. And I've had to re-record, so I'm going to just tell you right now, you'll see for yourself, it does fire with Men Gun and AccuStrike copies. Those are NF Strikes darts that I'm using, and they're worn. They're from my war bin. They're not new darts. And it does achieve at least in the middle 60s with those. And with brand new Buzz Bee long distance darts, I consistently hit that around that 70 mark. 69, 70, 71. And Buzz Bee Precise Pros hit up to in the 80s. With some brand new ones hitting all the way up to in around the 90-ish mark. And whether it's a fluke or not, I have had a couple of 100 FPS shots, and you'll see one on the Chronograph when we get to it here in just a second.
Okay, going to fire a few shots with a traditional Tech 6 that's unmodified. Typical shots aren't going to get very good performance. Or even leave the barrel. Let's give that another try. I'll give this dart one more chance at life. Okay, dart, you're dead. Let's try again. 31.3. Blazing fast. 32.3. That's enough. I was only going to fire 3. 1 didn't fire. You get the idea. 66. Same darts. The men gun style darts. Another 66.1. 62.4. Now, this is the men gun style darts. This does not like them. It's the worst performing out of all of them. 64.7. 66.1 out of a zombie strike dart. 69.6 out of a Buzz Bee long distance dart. And that was where I was getting most of my 70 and up. But let's swing over to some precise pros. $81.3. $89.4. Okay, we got 100 shot out of it. I'm stopping there.
And now coming back after showing you that chronograph, it's achieved it. A Tech 6 that's war-worthy. Now, whether or not you see that as war-worthy is your determination. For me, that's the baseline. If people can run around with a stock hammer shot and have fun at a Nerf war, then yeah, that would be the determination of it, is that you can have fun and get tags with a stock blaster. There you go. This is at least competitive with the current modern day pistol. That's all you need. So, can the Tech 6 be used? Yeah. Here's what I've done to make it be usable.
Okay, taking a look after doing the firing demonstration. How is this Tech 6 able to hit 60s consistently with random darts? In my testing, the NF Strike darts that I've been using, which are AccuStrike copies or men gun style, those are the worst performers. That's why I was using them mostly. I want you guys to see realistic figures on the low end of the scale. Those are straight out of my war bin, which are used. They've seen, 2 summers of use actually, so those darts are a good example of what you could expect. Just throwing darts into these brass barrels and firing. You're going to get at least in the 60s, which is what you would expect out of a current Nerf Elite blaster firing worn darts. With new darts, they'll fire around 70, maybe 75 if you're lucky, with a good, good retaliator, but generally around 70, meaning, 60s to 70s overall. This will fire in the 60s all day long, and will hit into the 70s with good darts. Like, say, the brand new, I've only fired 1 or 2 of them, brand new Buzz Bee long distance darts. It'll hit 70 with those. And it'll hit up into the 80s with Buzz Bee Precise Pros. But that's the case for a lot of blasters. How did that happen? Well, as you can look inside, you see already, that's not a Tech 6. It is and it isn't. Now, you'll see the mechanism here is missing. The rotational mech. There's normally a black piece of plastic that goes back here and hooks to the same pin that the priming bar goes in. What I've done here is eliminated the rotational mechanism because it wouldn't bypass the larger plunger tube. And yes, that's a larger plunger tube. For those of you who aren't familiar, here is a typical Tech 6 plunger tube. Yeah, it's about half the size of that one. This is actually about the size of, well, about your finger. I do not have fat fingers. Just so, as an example, here is a small size Phillips screwdriver. it's bigger than the plunger tube. Let's find something. Okay. 17/32 brass is not much bigger, or not much smaller, than this plunger tube. Okay, point made. So, what do I have in there, you might ask? Well, I said, normally Buzz Bee Tek 6s die to power Nerf blasters. This time, Nerf Retaliator plunger tube was offered up in exchange to the Tek 6, and that's what I used. Basically, this is a two Nerf parts went into this blaster. It's the plunger head off of the Ruckus, which, if you've seen my mod video on that thing a long time ago, it exploded. I said it wasn't worth modding. The bolt sled, it cracked internally and just smashed apart on like a 5-kilogram spring. But its plunger head has a flat attachment point to its plunger rod. Well, I just cut that off, drilled it out, and attached it to the Buzz Bee plunger rod, because here's another one I have. They screw on. So you just unscrew this plunger head partially, because it's a two-piece, unscrew the top piece. I drilled out the Nerf plunger head, put it on there with a little bit of epoxy around for an extra secure seal, and put it on the Buzz Bee plunger rod, and then I just secure it in a Retaliator plunger tube into the Tek 6 shell. So overall simple. The only thing I found that became a hurdle was, of course, I had to trim out all the shell. Anybody who's done shell integration or plunger tube swaps or expanded plunger tubes, you have to do that. I had to sacrifice the auto rotation. That's simple. Now it's basically like a bigger Tek 3 or Tek 4 where you have to manually rotate those anyways. But that is what it took. That is actually still a stock Buzz Bee Tek 6 spring because, well, as you know, Buzz Bee Tek 6 springs are good springs. I don't know exactly the rating, but I think they're like a 5 or 6 kilogram equivalent. So that's how that was done. Not a whole lot to it. Just shave out the shell. I did improve the seal, and I did bore out the back end of the cylinder to give more seal. I cut away the shell here, and I made my own foam seal, which is like a 1/5 triangle of the cylinder, and then of course I brassed every barrel. So manually rotated, and it works just fine.
So now, after going over the internals with you, you see it took a sacrifice of Nerf parts going into the Buzz Bee, which I absolutely love that as a Buzz Bee guy. It's like so many of these things die to power up Nerf blasters. It's time for the role reversal. Retaliator parts and the junky Ruckus part, which at least the plunger head on the Ruckus was usable. Can't say much for the rest of the blaster, but at least that was usable. So this thing is now powered up by a Retaliator plunger tube and a Nerf Ruckus plunger head. And other than that, it remains a Tek 6. So it's not, my goal was it had to remain primarily a Buzz Bee Tek 6. It couldn't be something like CO2 powered or HPA. I did not want to change what it was. It was a spring powered revolving cylinder pistol. But it is that. Now, as I showed with the internals, the plunger tube is big enough, it got in the way of the advancement mechanism. So now you rotate it. Not hard to do. You just have your 6 darts in there and you rotate it to line up with the priming handle. Nice mark there, actually. Just you line up the cylinder there, pull it back, and then of course can't dry fire it anymore. And then got a satisfying little pop, which would be unexpected out of this, because most people are used to the pitiful little 30-35 feet per second. And for those of you who might wonder, the reason why I didn't do Precise Pros out of the stock blaster, the hooks on the dart tooth are monstrous. That actually grab the Precise Pros even worse than the men gun style darts. And in essence, the superior Precise Pro dart actually works even worse in old Buzz Bee blasters. In brass or upgraded blasters, or just any modern day blaster, Precise Pros generally up the performance. And that's why even when I'm chronographing this, I get an extra 20 feet per second or so. Really good seal, as well as they have kind of a slick surface, so they really rock it out of brass really nicely, as long as it's not into a sealed barrel system. But enough of me giving the kudos to the Precise Pros. War-worthy Tek 6. So Jimmy Rohn, I am going to say 100% that I accomplished what I set out to do. I'll let you comment below if you watch the video, but I will link it for you on the Facebook group so you can see this. But a war-worthy Tek 6, brassed with Nerf internals. I bet nobody ever thought they'd see that. But this is MongooseJake, hoping you enjoyed the video. If you watched all the way to the end, thank you, and till next time, I'll see you then.